That number again, 780-952-1951, if you need to ask a question. Okay, well, we've got a full program, so I'm going to get started. My name is Marian Edwards, and I'm honored to bring warm and militant greetings on behalf of the Edmonton May Day Committee. I'll tell you a little bit more about that committee later on. So today, May 1st, International Workers' Day, is more important than ever because it's coming increasingly clear that workers' empowerment is essential for our collective health. And workers' empowerment has always been the guiding spirit of May Day since the origins of the day in the 8-hour movement, which was a demand that galvanized workers' movements and struggles more than 100 years ago as workers were resisting their exploitation under capitalism. Today, the dangerous and destructive nature of the capitalist system is clearly exposed in the coronavirus crisis. And working people are answering the call to protect our collective health, but all the half measures that we're seeing or outright neglect and negligence of employers and governments are having disastrous impacts. So this year, May Day is an opportunity to encourage more and more workers to keep speaking up or to add their voices in protecting their safety, their rights, and their lives. So that's exactly what we hope to achieve with this virtual May Day event. To have an opportunity to hear from workers and advocates in some of the sectors most impacted by the crisis who are fighting back. So in our first hour, we'll hear from our invited speakers and performers. Hopefully all of them have been able to connect successfully. We'll hear from our speakers and performers. They're going to be people who will bring us greetings and share their experiences in some of the most impacted sectors. So from seniors care, meatpacking, education, international solidarity, and other areas. And we also have some music. So I encourage you to sing along at home, and I'll put the words to the songs as we're singing them up in the chat. So hopefully you can join us with that. And then in our second hour, we're going to open it up for discussion so we can hear from more workers to share their experiences. And really our goal is to make sure that we can work together, that we can fight to make sure that even as this virus passes, we never go back to normal because normal was the problem and business as usual is how we got into this mess. So we ask your patience as we navigate this new way of connecting in this quarantine time. Thanks to Greg Mady, who's with the Edmonton District and Labor Council, as well as with this year's, there he's waving, Edmonton May Day Committee, who's helping to moderate with this technology. So thank you, Greg. Is Kathy on the call? Kathy Hamlin. Not seeing her on the call. So we'll improvise. So we had Kathy Hamlin is a community grandmother from Treaty 8 territory originally. And as you know, if you've been to our May Day marches and rallies before, we always recognize the territory that we're gathered on. And we ask for that moment of not just acknowledgement, but also a time to focus our intention that on what we're gathered here to achieve. So in the absence of Kathy leading us in that ceremony, I just ask you to reflect on there may be people beyond Treaty 6 territory that are joining us, I'm not sure, but to just take a moment to reflect on the intention that we have set, which is to fight against the exploitation of workers and to make sure that it's the workers who decide the path forward. Okay. All right. So we've got a few messages in the chat. Feliz Dia de Trabajadores in Spanish. Marco, get ready because I'm going to call on you next. as we've mentioned, in seniors care and food processing and other sectors, workers have been speaking out for years about what kinds of things are needed to combat unsafe and unjust working conditions. So we've seen that workers are the ones that know what should have been done, what must be done, but what we're missing is the power to decide. So many of the hardest hit sectors are sectors where we see a lot of migrant workers. And we're seeing very clearly right now Canada's reliance on migrant workers in all areas of our economy, from agriculture to all kinds of caring work to food processing and service as well. But because of the exploitative nature of the labor trafficking programs, these essential workers face enormous challenges and difficulty in speaking about the dangerous and difficult working conditions they're facing. But Marco Luciano is a leader with Migrante Alberta, and he's also active, Migrante Alberta is also active in a national migrant rights coalition. So welcome, Marco Luciano. I will unmute you now. No. Greg, can you unmute him? I'm not seeming to be able to. There we go. Nope. Unmute. There we go. Marco, we can hear you now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome.
Okay.
Militant greetings to everyone. Happy May Day. My name is Marco. I'm from Migrante, Alberta. Of course, I would like to wish everyone a militant International Workers' Day, fellow migrants and immigrants and refugees and displaced peoples. Also marks this day as a day of unity and solidarity in order to advance our calls to protect migrant workers and their families against COVID-19, but also to fight for our rights as workers and resist neoliberal imposition to health and labor, and realize a truly just system for many who are exploited and oppressed by this capitalist system. We also offer our tribute to migrants and immigrant frontliners who have died as they perform their duties. We take our hats off to other migrant frontliners in the health sector, as well as all essential services who are at risk of daily exposure as they continue to do their work. COVID-19 exposed the vulnerabilities of migrants, refugees, and displaced peoples. This pandemic aggravates the capitalist crisis already spinning out of control way before it exploded globally. This vulnerability stems from the deteriorating access to free public healthcare system, the extreme flexibilization of migrant labor, and the intensifying problems of poverty, unemployment, and displacement of people from their countries of origin. Everywhere we see neglect of the health and well-being of migrants, from insufficient provisions of PPE to those in need, to lack of access because of undocumented status and lack of income, even in the simplest need of face mask or alcohol. Explosion of cases in Cargill and JBS meat plants, for example, shed light to the conditions of workers and the living and working conditions of migrant workers in Alberta. It also shed light on the racism that this crisis creates to divide communities and the working people. Dr. Hinshaw, while she provided good leadership, also careless and irresponsible statement puts the blame on the spread of the virus to the quote-unquote cultural living practices and carpooling of Filipinos. This created backlash among different community members in High River. While in JBS, it's rapidly getting exposed to this virus, the current government have not imposed a mandatory shutdown, and this big corporation continue to operate. Like many workers, many migrants are now out of employment, suffering from loss or reduced income, are in danger of becoming undocumented or deported, and will face uncertainties back home without any means of support. For TFWs in Canada, losing employment can mean losing their temporary worker status. There are more than 20,000 estimated undocumented migrants in Alberta. These workers are invited to Canada as part of the cheap and disposable workforce in caregiving, food service, and food production industries. We Albertans eat because of these workers. Many of these workers fall into the wide immigration cracks that made them lose their status. But due to their temporary and, in many cases, undocumented status, migrants are not covered by economic packages for workers, which doubles the problem of lack of income and even for their daily needs and basic services such as healthcare in these times of COVID-19. But in the midst of these hardships, it is important that we continue to fight for our rights as workers, and more importantly, for a change in the system where migrants are treated with dignity, equality, just, and respect. It is inspiring that everywhere, migrants and advocates, despite of the difficulties posed by the pandemic, continue to respond to their utmost urgency and issues and their concerns. Migrante have created a task force that addresses these immediate needs. We do fundraising, food distribution, and distribution of materials for their safety, such as masks, alcohol, disinfectants, and so on. We also kickstarted a campaign in the province called the HSS, the Alberta Health Care for All. And it calls for the provincial government to provide access to healthcare for non-Alberta Healthcare Insurance Plan cardholders, especially in this time of COVID. It's important for Albertans to understand that the healthcare and safety of these migrants are the health and safety of all Albertans. Nationally, though, through the Migrants' Rights Network, a loose network of grassroots migrants organizations, we're also campaigning for migrants to have access to CERB, as they are an active part of Canadian economy. Lastly, it is important for us, while it's important for us to do physical distancing to flatten the curve of COVID-19, it's also important for us to understand that it's only through the militant unity of the working class that we will defeat all crises, most especially the crisis of capitalism. Onward with workers' struggle. Long live international solidarity. I have a couple of minutes video of our campaign nationally, and that I would like to share with you.
In a public health crisis, unless we protect everyone, we cannot protect anyone.
I got my wife, her due date is on May 29th. Me and my wife, we don't have an SIN, a valid SIN number. And still we are asked to stay home. But the reality is that I cannot stay home. I don't have any kind of support. I need to hustle basically every day.
Ahora con el problema del COVID-19 no he podido ir a trabajar a Canadá. Y como nuestros ingresos económicos es con el trabajo que realizamos en Canadá, me encuentro en apuros económicos para solventar gastos en mi familia.
We cannot imagine ourselves on the street with our kids, having no way to provide them any food.
Los indocumentados, nosotros también somos humanos, nosotros también trabajamos y contribuimos fuertemente a la economía, a nuestro trabajo, nuestra mano de obra que permite que siga funcionando esta máquina de la economía. Nosotras limpiamos, cuidamos las casas de otras mujeres, las que trabajamos como domésticas, cuidamos niños, ancianos, hacemos limpieza en hospitales, supermercados, trabajamos en los campos, en las fábricas. Nuestra mano de obra se encuentra en todos los sectores de la economía.
Myself and all my coworkers were all laid off. As a result of losing my job and also not qualifying for support because my SIN is expired, I have no idea how I'm going to be able to pay for rent and food.
I still need to eat and live. I believe we also should not be left behind. We contributed to Canada.
我希望得到公平的待遇，我也应该得到政府的紧急救济金。
all migrants in Canada must have income support.
It's really hard for me to believe that migrants like myself and all migrants cannot get support because of a formality like expired social insurance number.
I'm ready to work. I'm ready to do what it takes to be a resident here. That I also include fighting for my rights as a worker, regardless of my status.
It is absolutely urgent that the government immediately extend income support to all workers who have been affected by COVID-19, regardless of their migration status.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. So we're going to try a little experiment here. We'll see how well it works. Normally, of course, we would be gathered likely on the steps of the Alberta legislature right now. We'd be able to look around and see all of these faces, or most of these faces, and many more carrying banners and signs, identifying your unions, your organizations, and most importantly, your demands for how we can reshape our society and our economy for the benefit of working people. And we'd be chanting some of those demands together. So I'd like to see if we can try to unmute everybody. What I'm going to do is in a moment, I think I know how to do that, Greg. So when I unmute you, I want to try and do a couple of chants in support of the kinds of issues that Marco was talking about. Okay, so muted now. And what we're going to try is good enough to work, and the response is good enough to work. So I say good enough to work, and hopefully I hear that there is words of good enough to say. All right, we've got some people in the background. Give it a shot. Good enough to work.
Good enough to work. Yeah, because he said
one more time. Good enough to work.
Good enough to work.
Good enough to work.
Good enough to work.
Right. And we'll also support the call of Migrante for healthcare for all here in Alberta, regardless of immigration status. So we'll keep that one the same. I'll say healthcare for all. You say healthcare for all.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
For all.
Yeah, but that's
Healthcare for all. Healthcare for all.
Healthcare for all.
Yeah,
the lawyers, and I actually spoke to another lawyer.
Muted again.
And in Phillips.
Well, I said sit tight. See how if the unit is able to resolve it.
Okay, there we go. You can all still hear me? All right. Well, it doesn't work quite as well. This technology can do a lot, but it doesn't quite replace the Sorry, you couldn't hear me there. So yeah, it was certainly not as the same as gathering together and chanting together, but we have to adapt and find new ways of connecting and building our struggle and our solidarity together. Okay, I want to see if we have Sandy joining us, Sandy Johnson. Because again, I can't see the names of the people who are just joining with audio. If you are just joining with audio, I'll give you my my cell again. You can text me to let me know if one of you is Sandy. Oh, there we go. Local 196. That must be her. Okay, here we go. So yeah, it's you know, of course, along with migrant workers, healthcare workers are also front and center in this time. But despite the pivotal nature of their role, too often they haven't been provided with the resources they need in order to keep themselves and their patients safe. So I don't know if you could read what I had on my sign there.
PPE for all, yeah, good.
But certainly for healthcare workers, it's an essential condition of work. But too often it's fallen to workers themselves to demand proper protective equipment or to take the step to refuse dangerous work in order to keep themselves and their patients safe. So our next speaker represents community nurses who are tasked with assisting some of the most vulnerable people during this crisis. Sandy Johnson is the first vice president of the United Nurses of Alberta, Local 196. So welcome to Sandy. Oops. What happened to you there? Where did you go?
Sandy, you should be good to go now.
I'm unmuted.
Perfect. Yep. Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Sandy. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of information. You are correct. I do come from a local that represents community nurses. And for people who may not be familiar with what that is, we are home care nurses, some of whom go into supportive living sites, some of whom go to some long-term care, many go into homes. I also have public health nurses who have been doing the lion's share, just about all of the assessment swabbing centers. And that includes the drive-throughs and all of the various clinics that have been set up to do that, including the Butter Dome. And they also do home visits. And we also have a couple of the emergency rooms, both at Strathcona Hospital as well as the Northeast Community Health Center. So those are ours. And we have some rural areas, Leduc, Thorsby area. We have, well, St. Albert's not rural. We don't go as far as Spruce Grove. So that's kind of the area that we have. And we also have some clinics inner city. So and we service the homeless population through a number of agencies downtown. So there's a number of folks that we are attempting to assist through this terrible situation. Our nurses, oh, and I guess I should say too, our nurses are also HealthLink. So yeah, there's a variety of needs out there, both from patients and from staff. But I think what I want to highlight is until COVID-19, it has always been accepted that nurses are able to do what's called a point of care risk assessment. So anytime we encounter a patient, and that's what we'll just call everybody for now, anybody that we work with is a patient, we do an assessment to determine what they need, what we need to help them, the environment, and so on and so forth, to make sure it's safe for all and everybody's getting what they need. And that has always been based on nurses' knowledge, skills, and their training, and so on and so forth. And that has never been a question. I mean, that's what we do. That's what we're schooled to know. That's what we do. Until COVID and N95s. And we have had many. There are 17 still outstanding as part of a complaint that went to Alberta Occupational Health and Safety. We got a decision that was interesting. I'll just put it as interesting. It was not in our favor, but it wasn't exactly based on probably the information it ought to have been. It's been appealed. But those were 17 that refused right off the bat with the assessment centers, as they were only being provided with what we call procedure masks, based on the fact that the employer refused to allow them to have N95s based on their assessment. And at the time, and nothing has changed actually, they were told that it's just droplet, as we've heard over and over again, that it's just carried through droplets. And that's it. That somehow, somewhere, somebody decided that. And even, you know, the European Union, and we had information from all over the world, and the nurses were aware of it. I mean, they do their homework. And so because there was still disagreement amongst the experts, nobody could say for sure. And because of SARS, Dr. Campbell, who came out of SARS as sort of the guru, said, whenever there's doubt, you always err on the side of more protection rather than less, yes? So, I mean, there was a lot that they were relying on when they made the assessment to use N95. And people, as we know, are not necessarily symptomatic when they're positive. So they were requesting N95 and flat out being refused. That's it. No, you're not getting them. The biggest driver, it would seem, was a belief or a desire to have it be believed by the employer that there was a shortage of N95 masks. To this day, they stand on that, and yet publicly they will say no. No, there isn't. We have no shortage. In fact, we just gave 700,000 away. So I find that hard to believe. However, having said that, there was some work done between our union, AUPE and HSAA, who also have members represented in the healthcare stream, and the employers, Covenant Health and AHS, to come up with a document that seemed to be perhaps a saw-off as to how we could manage that. And what it said was, if a nurse deems, I mean, I'm just giving part of it, but if a nurse does a point of care risk assessment and determines that indeed an N95 is required, that will be supplied. If for some reason, I mean, no questions, but if for some reason that can't happen, then they will be reassigned. In other words, they won't be forced to do the work that they have just said no to. Well, we thought that was going to work. Well, apparently it hasn't. I can tell you it hasn't. The employers have just ignored that altogether. And the way they read it is, regardless of whether they've done a point of care risk assessment or not, N95s are not available to them. And if you don't want to do this, then you're out, you're going to go do something else. So people who are still doing the swabbing and doing close contact with people who are positive or presumed positive, at least symptomatic, are still doing many procedures, not intubation. We're not talking that, but they're doing procedures without N95. So that is going, as I said, the decision from Alberta Occupational Health and Safety has been appealed, but as everyone knows, that's not exactly a speedy process, right? That has gone through many senior management, like I'm talking executive director, VP level. Monday, it goes to our community joint workplace health and safety committee. And then from there, it will have to go to the CEO, but this will be taken from the staff themselves as the presentation, not through any senior management that I don't know what kind of spin they put on it or what they think, but that's sort of where we're at. So as great a job as they're doing, and God love them, they're doing a good job. I mean, we're all out there trying to do the best we can, but yeah, their lives are at risk. And the concern seems to be more, and I don't want to say that it's not okay, but the concern is more, well, what about the patients? Well, make no mistake, the staff is concerned about the patients. That's why they keep doing what they're doing in spite of the fact that their own health is at risk. But at some point we have to say, excuse me, but what about the staff? They're your responsibility. What about the staff? And I guess the question would be, well, how many staff have been affected? The honest to God truth is we don't know. They won't tell us. So unless we happen to know somebody personally, or somebody knows somebody and tells us, they will not reveal the staff that have been affected. In other words, have tested positive and maybe hospitalized. I don't know. They will not say where they're from. They will not say whether they're male or female. They won't say anything about them. They'll just throw them into the pool of healthcare workers. So that's my spiel. that's what it's like to be frontline in community. It's tough.
Thank you, Sandy. So I think what's clear to me from what Sandy had to say is it is the workers themselves that are doing the work that need to be able to be empowered to have the tools that they express are necessary, regardless of what their employer or the government has to say. And like healthcare workers, other people who cannot stay home to work in these times have also had to fight to protect their health and safety. So today we've seen across the US, warehouse and retail workers were planning to walk out. So we certainly send our greetings of solidarity to them and look forward to hearing how that has been going in the United States. Here in Canada as well, postal workers are a key lifeline for so many people isolating at home right now. And the Canadian Union of Postal Workers is certainly no stranger to having to fight to protect its members' health and safety. So here to tell us a little bit more about what's going on in the Edmonton local is Devin Runval, a postal worker and first Vice President of Organizing for CUPW Edmonton, Local 730. I will find you, Devin.
Oh, I'm on me.
Oh, great. Okay,
Greg's already over it. So thank you very much. Yeah, it's a real honor to be able to speak to this. A little bit of preaching to the choir here, but as you all know, that the power of the workers and the power of a union lies in the work floor. So for the last year in Edmonton, we have been pushing very hard through education of taking back the work floor. We've been putting as many of our coworkers and our members through a specific class, taking back the work floor class that empowers our workers to fight for the things that matter to them. We have a collective agreement that's this thick, but it's only worth as much as it is. Sorry, it's only worth what the workers are willing to fight for it. That time and again, I've heard from supervisors to managers to all the way up the management chain. If you don't like it, file a grievance. That's their response. They don't care if it's a contract violation. They don't care if they're putting their workers at risk. But until workers actually unite and push back collectively, they just walk right over us. So for the last year, we've been pushing as many members as we can through this course and have seen massive results. Complete change in the Edmonton work floor to the point where when this COVID kicked off, no one was ready for it, but we did have the organizing in place. So we had key members in all our facilities that we could contact, that we could use to organize and find out what they needed, what supplies they had, and what safety precautions Canada Post was putting in place. And what we found was that only in the facilities that had organized work floors were they actually implementing the proper PPE and safety procedures. So we in Edmonton organized and we started pushing back, and that action, as well as in other locals, rolled out across the country so that we have throughout Canada Post, at least on paper, proper safety procedures in place that only came from the workers fighting. It didn't come from the corporation. Up until just a number of weeks ago, and the only official response that we were getting from management was wash your hands. And unfortunately, the machine of the union wasn't able to help the workers either. That it took the workers from the work floor, from the depots, from the plant, to push back and say, no, we're not going to work unless we're safe. And it was through those that those actions that we've actually seen very minimal cases of COVID in Canada Post, considering the amount of exposure or potential exposure that we have. So we've been working really hard with our members to ensure that that spread doesn't happen in our facilities. And just as I was mentioning before with this course, that this COVID doesn't change the situation as far as the plight of the workers. We've always been in this situation. This is just an example and a reason for us to organize. And we're going to continue over the next few years to push this agenda of empowering workers, because we can go on a May Day parade. We can come on this webinar and sing solidarity forever and all that sort of thing. But if our coworkers don't believe it, it's not going to get us anything. And if we just expect our coworkers to jump when we say it's time, it's not going to happen. We have to give them the proper training and motivation to fight for the things that matter to them, so that they'll be ready to fight for the bigger picture items. So that, like right now, if we called a general strike, 99% of union members aren't going to be ready. We're just not there yet. We need to, as union leaders, we need to realize that. And the only way that we're going to get there is through organizing and education. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Okay, I'm looking for Joseph. Oh, okay. We're waiting on another worker who hopefully will be able to join us shortly. We're just seeing if we can get him connected. So, as we've heard from both Sandy and from Devin, employers can't be counted on to ensure the health and safety of workers. And at the same time, as many of us are working really hard to flatten the curve and prevent the spread, doing everything we can, we're seeing reckless actions of employers that are endangering all of us, and especially their employees. And maybe nowhere has that been more evident than at the Cargill meatpacking plant in High River, Alberta, which is the site of the worst outbreak in Alberta. So ignoring the calls of the workers and their union, Cargill, that was backed up by Devin Dreeshen and the Kenney government, refused to act to close the plant until the outbreak had already spread to hundreds of workers, their families, and the community, including seniors care facilities. So we're gonna hopefully get Joseph joining us later, who's a steward with the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 401 that represents the workers at Cargill, and also JBS in Brooks, which is another huge meatpacking plant. And one of the things that one of the refrains that we're hearing more and more from workers from all different sectors is that the problems were there before, and now they're just getting exposed in this coronavirus pandemic. The situations and conditions of work were never good. They were never safe. They were never just. And certainly in a plant where you see half of all the beef processed for all of Canada. I mean, how can that be safe? So hopefully we'll return back to Joseph later on. But we know that many workers have already paid with their lives during this crisis. 3 days ago, we marked the International Day of Mourning for workers killed and injured on the job, amid the sobering realization that next year we'll be mourning many more victims of COVID-19 taken from amongst the frontline workers who did not come home safe from work during this crisis. So Andre, get yourself ready, because I'm going to call on you next. So on the 28th, we mourn, but then we move on to organize and to fight like hell for the living. So the anthem of this sentiment is a song that's many of you will be familiar with. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night. So it tells the tale of a worker and a union organizer who was killed for fighting for workers' rights. So we're grateful to have Andre Vachon, who's a pipeline worker here in Alberta, who will join us to sing this beautiful song for us. So Greg, if you've already unmuted Andre. Okay, where are you, Andre? Peggy says Andre's here. Perhaps he's just calling in. I'm going to try and unmute the folks on the phone. I'm not seeing Andre. Andre, if you're there, can you text me and let me know if you are on the call? I'm going to send him a message right now. We got to roll with the punches. All right, we'll go on for now. So in the midst of this pandemic crisis, oh, okay, he's mad. Okay, so it's sometimes we've got, there we go. It looks like we've found out who is Andre. Andre,
Yes, I believe you can hear me now.
yes, we can hear you. Hooray.
Yeah, I'm washing my hands of this. I was told that I tried to unmute myself several times, but I was prevented. Yes. Yeah, I'm expected to sing at this point, correct?
Yes, please. I don't know if you could hear all the introduction, but we're
that's
hoping
fine.
that you'll sing Joe Hill for us.
I'll say the little bit I know about Joe Hill. I know that he was a worker and a labor organizer, and he must have been extremely effective at what he did, because he was framed on a trumped up murder charge, found guilty, framed by what the song calls the copper bosses, and he was executed by firing squad of all things. And when he was about to die, he said, "Please don't mourn for me. What you should do is organize." So he was quite serious about his role in life. Okay, I'll see if I can find the right key here. Because I can't sing too low. I can't sing like Paul Robeson. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. In Salt Lake City, Joe, says I, and standing by my bed, they framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I ain't dead. Says Joe, but I ain't dead. The copper bosses killed you, Joe. They shot you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe, I didn't die. Says Joe, I didn't die. And standing there as big as life and smiling with his eyes, says Joe, what they could never kill went on to organize. Went on to organize. From San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill, where workers defend their rights, it's there you'll find Joe Hill. It's there you find Joe Hill. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. There you go. Okay, now I can't hear you.
Okay, I am unmuted, and Greg will be able to mute you again, hopefully. Okay, thank you very much, Andre. That was beautiful.
You're welcome, Aaron.
Okay. Okay, so in the midst of this pandemic crisis, Jason Kenney remains determined to ramp up years of cuts and wrecking of the social programs that working people have fought to build to meet our needs and protect ourselves and our communities. And maybe nowhere have we seen these attacks more than in the education sector. So just as students and education workers were struggling to adjust to a new reality of online learning, Kenney imposed the layoff of more than 20,000 support staff. Also in post-secondary institution, Kenney's still pushing ahead with drastic cuts and so-called performance-based funding that have also led to many more layoffs. And it was all the more hard to accept because at the same time, we also saw him commit $7.5 billion to the Keystone XL pipeline. So it just makes me think, imagine what working people could build with $7.5 billion. Instead of imposing cuts and layoffs to tens of thousands of workers in the K-12 and post-secondary sectors, we would use those resources to educate ourselves and empower people, especially young people, to build a new society. One of the unions whose members have been impacted by these cuts is the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 3550, representing Edmonton Public Schools support staff. Carol Thompson, president of QP Local 50, is our next speaker. And I'm just looking for,
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, great. Oh, you unmuted yourself. Fantastic. Even better. Thanks, Carol. Go ahead.
It's funny how we're getting used to Zoom, right? Yeah. Hi all. Sorry, I'm late. I did not have the meeting information, and so I have not had an opportunity to hear what everyone else has said. But we're all here on a pretty amazing day, May 1st, International Workers' Day. Yeah. Premier Jason Kenney and his crew have done a lot of damage actually to public education, public services, public health in general, but I can speak to some of the impacts to public education. Edmonton Public Schools is the second largest school district in the province, and even though they had indicated that they had not cut provincial funding for when they brought in their budgets, they absolutely certainly did. They did not, as we all know, they're not very good at telling the truth. So we had some pretty severe impacts to the 2019-20 school year. And then part of the, in his words, the fight against COVID-19, they attacked again with a 14% reduction in the allocation to student allocation and to transportation, which has affected everyone in the school districts across the province, and even more so for the next school year. So we've suffered a lot of layoffs within the last couple months, or in the next 2 months, I guess. And again, ultimately, it's going to be the families and the parents that are most seriously affected by this. And many of our staff will not be returning to the school to support these kids in learning in the new school year. So our issue is, again, not only trying to figure out how we're doing this online learning supports, and according to Premier Kenney and Education Minister LaGrange, when kids aren't in school, education workers have nothing to do. So he gave 25,000 of them their pink slips. And again, many of those staff are not going to return for the new school year. And we're going to have to try to figure out what the future is going to look like. And it's really sad. I lived through the Klein cuts, and it took us years to recover from those. And again, public education is really, it's one of the foundations of our society, and really important as Canadians to have good public education, good public healthcare, good public services, and this province seems to be on a mission to destroy all that. So, thanks.
Sorry, Carol, you were finished? Okay, all right. Thank you, Carol. Here in Canada, we've seen, as Carol mentioned, the devastating results of years and years of neoliberal globalization, privatization, deregulation, cuts to social programs that have resulted most tragically in the situation unfolding in our seniors care centers. Carol Wodak, you can get ready if I know you're there. I'm going to call on you next. So, we're seeing now everybody that's coming to awareness, those who have followed the situation in seniors care have known for a very long time how urgent it is, and how urgent it is to remove the profit motive from these private seniors care facilities that receive public funding. But we're now seeing we're seeing a greater awareness of this situation, and we're also seeing politicians who themselves are responsible for the results in this sector, desperately trying to silence the voices of workers who are caring for our seniors and cover their own tracks and their own responsibility for the situation. So I know that Carol Wodak is a longtime advocate for seniors care, for quality seniors care for both the residents and the workers themselves. Right, so Carol is with the Seniors Task Force of Public Interest Alberta, and you are now unmuted, Carol.
Thanks, Mary.
Okay, we can hear you.
Hello all. I'm really glad to join you on this International Workers' Day. We need these Memorial Days to remind ourselves to pay attention to issues and to people we may not think about in our ordinary everyday lives and conversations. And it's especially relevant now in the midst of this new world experience of COVID. It's changed the way we live and work and interact with others. It's shown us we can get a clearer view if we stop relying on fossil fuels, given us a new awareness of priorities, and most importantly, an opportunity to find a new normal and new priorities. Most obviously, it's created cracks that let some light shine on horrors we've ignored for too long. I won't regale you with the details and statistics about the vulnerable seniors who have succumbed to COVID in unnecessarily huge numbers, or the caregivers who have also suffered and died in disproportionately large numbers. I will remind you that the most of each group were women. They are folks who lived on the fringes of our society without the benefit of health care, financial security, safe housing, or the social inclusion most of us take for granted. Usually I talk about the failures of the system itself, largely unsupervised, standards devised by the operators, not effectively regulated or monitored, confidential corporate contracts, nowhere to deal with a concern or even with an unnecessary and preventable death. This is a national system which actually began in the recovery and social awareness after the Spanish flu, the Great Depression, and 2 world wars. The vision of social responsibility has got lost with the rise of global economics and neoliberal policies. Elder care is now dominated by an industry which the BC Seniors Advocate reported is worth $2 billion a year, with the majority, $1.3 billion, spent in the contracted sector, in the private sector, in British Columbia alone. Statistics Canada reports that the 2018 profit margin for private nursing homes in Canada was 10.4% of their operating costs. That's a pretty good return on investment. While public care facilities typically operate at a loss, with serial austerity measures applied. Today, I want to talk about the workers who provide care. If we want good care, it will be because we take good care of the caregivers. Mostly, of course, we don't. There's an amazing and distressing report by the Ontario Health Coalition, commissioned by Unifor, which describes the unbelievable working conditions of personal support workers in Ontario care facilities. Like the BC Seniors Advocates reports, it's also descriptive of conditions found across Canada. The report documents shortages of staff and staff working short, underskilled staff working with fragile folks with complex medical and physical care needs, dangerous work with folks who usually have dementia and often mental health issues who are often difficult or aggressive. Training is expensive and not rewarded by pay or opportunities. It's precarious work, casual or part-time work without benefits, frustrating work with not enough time to do the job they want to do to provide the care they know is needed. It's work with little, if any, supervisory support, nothing to respond to the stresses of this work. Work without security, benefits, a living wage, or a pension. It's work without personal protective equipment or training, even in the midst of the COVID pandemic. It's work done mostly out of sight, out of public concern. They weren't alone, I'm afraid. The community home care workers are equally exploited and working perhaps in even riskier situations. And then there are the unpaid care providers, 400,000 in Alberta, who provide about a third of all elder care, not only without pay, but with the loss of their own paid work and pension. They save Alberta healthcare system about $60 million a year, or $3 billion annually. They save Canada about $25 billion a year. All of these things are wrong. They're unnecessary. They're designed only to benefit investor returns. I want these workers to know that some of us are aware and we care, and we are working to make sure changes happen.
Thank you, Carol. We got some applause there. We definitely need to keep up the struggle to make sure we never go back to the way it was, because the way it was is exactly the problem and the reason why we are seeing the level of spread that we're seeing now. I wanted to take this opportunity to read a short letter from a long-term care worker where the actions of the staff were actually crucial in preventing an outbreak. She didn't feel comfortable naming her employer or her workplace, but she wanted to share her experience and the experience of her coworkers. So she says that working in long-term care, we watched the COVID-19 pandemic unfold with great interest. We saw what happened to long-term care, their staff and residents in Italy and Spain. We know we have to protect the most vulnerable in our society. Many of our staff still have family in other countries, so we were hearing firsthand accounts of the lockdowns occurring in Europe and how the Asian countries' responses to the pandemic was so different from our own. Then we heard about the outbreaks in LTC facilities in British Columbia and Ontario. It was clear that our LTC system in Alberta was not going to be able to properly handle this pandemic. We became more and more nervous. Initially in Alberta, the mass gathering restrictions did not apply to LTC, nor did the social distancing requirements. Obviously, it would not be easy to meet these requirements, but it wasn't sitting well with us. Alberta did put in place an essential visitors only policy. AHS defined essential as anyone coming to help with feeding or care. Sites were very concerned about the residents becoming more isolated than they already were, so they were reluctant to be really strict with the definition of essential. We felt that people were being allowed to quote unquote feed, but in reality it was a pretense to continue to visit their loved ones. We didn't feel safe not knowing who or what they had been in contact with. We always agreed that visiting a loved one who was at the end of life was and is essential. What followed was our staff coming together to let our views be known. We sent emails to management. We questioned AHS definition of essential visitors. We brought forward all our concerns. We met with management. We were assured all was being done to keep us and our site safe. Yet people were still coming in under the definition of essential that frontline staff didn't think should be allowed in. Meanwhile, Calgary was experiencing horrible outbreaks of COVID-19 in facilities, and Edmonton had an outbreak in seniors living as well. We were watching the government talk about how we have to protect the most vulnerable, but where was the action? We weren't locking down. Why weren't we locking down? Why weren't we following BC and Ontario and going to single sites for staff to reduce the risk of spread? Why weren't we at the very least getting a list from where the staff work so outbreaks could be monitored to limit spread from site to site? Around this time, AUPE was able to successfully come up with policies on one worker, one site with some of the private long-term care sites. These agreements provided security to long-term care staff that would have to give up a position temporarily. These agreements became standard the standard that AHS would base their single site policies off of, but unfortunately did not go nearly as far as they should. So anyway, she says we had had enough. We sent an email with at least 20 questions and concerns. We ended up with a meeting with management on the unit. All our concerns were laid out. The staff were so clear about their fears, concerns, questions, etc. We said how disappointed we were that AHS had not changed the definition of essential visitors. We said we would rather work longer and harder doing everything by ourselves than have family members coming into and bringing in and exposing us to the unknown. For us, the risk was too great. We were concerned about whether we would have enough PPE if an outbreak did occur in our facility. Our main view is yes, HS policy is our baseline, but why can't we go above and beyond that? Why can't we strive to be the most protected, the safest site? Instead of meeting the status quo, let's strive to be the best. Something seemed to hit home with them. By that evening, our policy had changed. We had gone to officially absolutely no visitors. Forms came out in anticipation of the yet to be mandated single site agreements. We were now more protected than was mandated by the Chief Medical Officer of Health in Alberta. Finally, patient and staff safety was being taken seriously. We can't let up though. It is a continual struggle. This is just one battle in a long war. The fight to make long-term care in Alberta and Canada better is one that cannot stop when this pandemic is over. We can't forget our outrage. We must continue to fight for the residents and the staff. Okay, so yeah, we certainly need to keep the pressure on. Business as usual is exactly the problem in seniors care. And beyond seniors care, in all aspects of our healthcare system, we need a strong public health response to be able to protect us from situations like we find ourselves in right now. So one of the strongest advocates we have here in Alberta for public health is Sandra Azakar, who's with the Friends of Medicare. Sandra, you're unmuted now.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be able to bring greetings of solidarity on behalf of Friends of Medicare. So great to see so many of you that I haven't been able to see for so long. It feels like a lifetime. I think, you know, for Friends of Medicare, we have always done our advocacy through the lens and the underlying belief that working conditions are definitely care conditions when it comes to healthcare. And so for us, this pandemic has taught us a lot and has shone a light on the importance of our public healthcare system. Alberta is leading the way in testing, which serves to flatten the curve by having appropriate testing and diagnosis ahead of time, so that we can, you know, get those people that need to be treated and isolated and so forth. But that only happens because we had a public laboratory that this government has a number and previous conservative governments have tried to privatize over and over again. So that's going to be one of the fights coming forward, is that this government has not made any kind of move towards reversing that privatization of our precision lab services. Even before this pandemic hit, they had changed the name from Public Labs to Precision Labs of Alberta. And so if you want to help us out, please sign a petition that we currently have going on our website. It's important that we get the conversation going about the importance and highlighting the role that our public labs have played throughout this pandemic, and making sure that this government rethinks their initial plan. We have also actually seen that healthcare definitely has models of care, but these models of care don't necessarily fit the vulnerable populations. So we see those homeless people, we see people who use drugs, people who do not, the most vulnerable actually, who do not at this point have the same access to the healthcare that people need. And I don't know if Marco has actually talked about, migrant workers as well, but that it's a concern when it comes to fitting the model of care that we have in this province. So there's a lot of lessons to be taken from this pandemic. But I was asked to really quickly, I'm not gonna labor the point that has already been made by quite a few speakers around the seniors care issue. Seniors, when systems are under stress, it's when we see the cracks. And the COVID-19 toll on Alberta continuing care system has exposed many of the cracks that have been created as a result of decades of privatization and the inequity that perpetual cost cutting has wrought onto the system. What we are seeing now was decades in the making, as Carol has pointed out. Seniors in continuing care facilities now count for over half of all COVID-19 deaths in Alberta. So that's 64 people out of the 92 that have died in Alberta are living in continuing care facilities. And now there's about 500 as of today, 580 people that have tested positive, and that number keeps on rising every single day. And as Sandy had mentioned, there is no clear data available as to how many workers who provide care to seniors or in other healthcare facilities have tested positive, because that's a huge issue that we need to have a better control of. So we have, as advocates and seniors advocates, we have been sounding the alarm over issues in seniors care system for decades now. We have repeatedly called on the government to get profits out of seniors care and to enact patient-staff ratios, and to address unsustainable workloads, which often lead to burnout for staff and which degrade the quality of care and attentions that seniors deserve. And we have right now a system where Alberta Health Services provides funding to seniors facility for staffing care workers, yet there's often no strings attached to this funding, and to ensure that 100% of it is spent on the staff that are providing care. And this lack of accountability and transparency are disastrous mismanagement of public dollars, and have resulted in what we're seeing today when it comes to the shortage of staff. The current funding structure that we have in that system creates the incentives for both the not-for-profit and the for-profit sector to pursue low-wage strategies of their staff, and where many are treated unequal in pay benefits and workplace rights in comparison to those with similar education and experience in working in public facilities right now. So that's a huge concern. So what has the response of this government and Alberta Health Services been through this pandemic? I think people have talked about, the extra money that was allotted to private for-profit operators. $24.5 million was given to these for-profit operators to offset the cost pressures of COVID. Yet you'll be hard pressed to find any work site right now where that $2 top off just for the healthcare rates has actually been allotted to the frontline staff. It also served to create inequity and divide workers, because the only ones that were given this money were the healthcare aides, and it didn't count the LPNs or the RNs or anybody else who works in these sites that provide the same level of or that provide the care. So it's a huge issue for us. Following that up with protective equipment, you know, again, they had April the 10th that as a deadline for them to ensure that all facilities were providing protective equipment. Yet we know that there's some facilities where workers are only given 2 masks a day, and they go from room to room, and so there's tons of inconsistencies and a lack of standards when it comes to ensuring that workers are protected while doing their jobs, and at the same time they protect the patients that need to be protected. We have been calling for staffing ratios for decades now, and it has never been more important that that is somewhat facilitated now in legislation. There's currently a review on seniors care regulations that's being led by Rick McIver, and it has people like the owner of Rosedale on the panel. And so we need to make sure that coming out of this, that we will be ready to fight to ensure that our seniors are receiving. This is the moment where returning to the same old is not going to cut it. When this pandemic is lifted and the brunt of the threat of the COVID-19 has passed, I think the toll that it has taken on our seniors should serve as a harrowing reminder of the failure of our seniors care system. And it will not be enough for us to return to normal, because in Alberta, our continuing care system's normal is woefully flawed. Once this pandemic is over, it is imperative that we do not return to the same old structure of continuing care that allows corporations and their shareholders to profit massively at the expense of Alberta's seniors. So we have the responsibility to do better. This crisis must serve as a grim yet timely reminder to our government that we need an immediate reevaluation of how we are providing care to seniors in this province. And first and foremost, this reevaluation must include bringing seniors care under our public umbrella, full stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, people before profits, and let the workers decide, because they're the ones that have the best interests of the residents at heart. So as we know, it's International Workers' Day, and we are going to hear from a couple of speakers who can speak to the situation that some workers are facing in other countries. But before we do that, Daniel is going to sing El Pueblo Unido for us. Okay, Daniel, you're unmuted.
Everyone, I hope you can hear me. Hi.
Yes.
What an interesting challenge, and what an interesting way of meeting and getting everybody together, especially on such an important day. As a union worker, I belong to the local 720 and local 424. Our collective bargaining, it's going really bad. They keep taking more and more time away from us, not just money, but our time. And the way we as union members have been fighting against it, it's by educating each other and by supporting each other on the job site and outside as well, in our circles, and that's the only way. All I can say to the man, to the industry, to the government is that be ready, because when this goes away, when this happens, when we get our ride back to get together again, we will walk, and I'm certain that we will be gathering again, and we're going to unite all of our voices together, all the essential workers, the non-essential workers maybe. In the end, we're all essential into the same world, the working world. Either you work with your hands, either you work with your brain, either you work with your eyes. we're all on this together, and we're going to battle this together. Essentially, I want to say to the politicians out there that be prepared because when the time is ready, there's a lot of unhappy workers out there. There's a lot of injustice going on, and the new normal and the previous normal and the next normal that we're going to have when we can go back to the streets, it's going to have to set the precedent of what we can do when we unite. Educating each other, it's a great step, but also making the true effort to speak to your neighbors, the true effort to speak to the circle and the people that's near you, near your heart, and that's how we can make the real change. As an artist, it's been very hard to do more. I was very afraid to do the Zoom thing, and it's my first experience. But thank you, Marian, for opening this new window, this new door. Hopefully, next time we meet and I see a lot of familiar faces, we can do it in a real fashion. We can do it in a real local and see each other and be able to at least shake hands again. So all the love of the world, all the power to the people. We need to know that when we unite, we are more, and we have to be certain that we are going to take the legislature again. We are going to meet again on those steps, and we're going to tell Kenny how unhappy we are from all the cuts and all the and in a way, I'm thankful that he's awakening all those undecided voters, or maybe all the voters that he voted for or that didn't know what to do. That I hope you mess up some more, because we are ready for you. We are ready to take the next step. And when this goes away, we will all unite. And I'm certain of that. So I'm sorry I couldn't, on the same note, I wanted to play El Pueblo Unido, the People United. But it's hard for me right now to do it, just me on the guitar. I'm so used to playing that same song with the band. So I'm gonna share a video that I have with English subtitles. So then you can also read the beautiful poetry of the song, and we can all sing along with our hearts and our voices out loud. So thanks once again, Marian. Hello to all the familiar faces that we get to see again. So here it goes. This is, give me 1 second, please. And hopefully you can all hear it. I hope it's working.
Daniel, I think the video is lagging too much, but if you were willing to sing it just a cappella, I think I would join you, and probably Sandra and a couple others would join you. Do you want to give it a shot a cappella? Sandra's nodding yes. How do you feel, Daniel?
Weird, let's go.
Okay.
Let me, I grab the lyrics. Yeah, I'm very sorry. I had a plan, my internet. I'm just gonna pause this.
Let me know in the chat if there's anyone else that wants to be unmuted.
Okay, let's go. Let's do it a cappella.
You start us off, we'll join. El pueblo.
Unido.
Pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. De pie cantar,
Vamos a quemar.
avanzan ya banderas de unidad. Y tú vendrás marchando junto a mí, y así verás tu canto y tu bandera florecer,
la luz,
un rojo amanecer que anuncia ya
la vida que vendrá.
De pie luchar, que el pueblo va a triunfar, será mejor la vida que vendrá. A
conquistar nuestra felicidad y en un clamor mil voces de combate se alzarán, dirán canción de libertad.
Y con decisión la patria vencerá. Y ahora
el pueblo que se alza la lucha con voz gigante, gritando adelante.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
Yay.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm sorry, the other version would have been amazing as well. In the end, nothing compares to what we can do when we meet and the experiences having to overcome these obstacles. But you know, we're ready. Hopefully, we can do this again. And I would say next time, I truly hope that it's in person. So to all the workers and everybody out there, we will walk soon.
Thank you, Daniel. We have to adapt and roll with the punches when we're in the worker struggle. So, let me just find where I'm at now. So our next speaker is Ramona Japan, who is a member of the Latin American Caribbean Solidarity Network. Ramon, I will unmute you now. Okay, go ahead.
Hear me?
We can hear you.
But you can't see me.
You're a man of mystery.
Happy International Workers' Day for everybody. This is quite a new experience, as Daniel was saying. Feel a little bit nervous because usually we're on the street. And of course, when we're on the street, things are different because then we take control. Then we know that the street is ours, and we can, we can chant, we can join together and express our solidarity to one another. This is a very special day. Solidarity is a component of the working class. Throughout history, solidarity has been some of the tools, for lack of other words, the worker uses, whether it's during a strike, during a crisis like the pandemic that we are going through now. It is workers who always put their shoulders in order to solve the situation. It's a shame by listening to previous speaker Sandra and the others talking about seniors. Seniors are the workers of yesterday. They were the one who carry the economy and the services up to today. So it is important on a special day like today to pay homage today and wish them all the luck. And unfortunately, no thanks, but due to capitalism and their neoliberal policies that is being implemented throughout the world, workers are in the situation that we are today. This is a pandemic crisis that is being globalized, the same as the neoliberalism and predator capitalism has globalized the exploitation of workers throughout the world. Today, as I was reading, for example, in terms of who pays the price, there was a piece of news in there that it says 305 millions of workers are without employment due to the coronavirus pandemic. Quite an amount. So this need to make us, reflect. We need to pause. We need to look around. It's been I was very impressed by the sister from the Nursing Union, by the brother from CUPW, talking about the issue of the workplaces and the way CUPW, which is my union, by the way. I am a lifetime member of CUPW. I was a local president too for a few years. And it's quite impressive the way they talk about organizing in the work floor, because in spite of having collective agreements, there is always a constant need to organize on the work floor in order to educate workers in terms of the issues that they affect them at the workplace, but at the same time take the opportunity to expand. Because the issue that we face on the workplaces is not isolated as what's going on, throughout the country, but also throughout the world. That's why today workers, I guess, in this special day, we reach across the border to express our solidarity to one another. Our organization, our committee, the Latin American and Caribbean Solidarity Network, we've been fighting and expressing and coalescing to express our solidarity to what's going on, particularly in this case in Latin America and the Caribbean countries, which is essentially the same as we were talking today. We look at the news, and I'm originally from Chile, and what's going on in there, it is horrible. It is the ecotome of the implementation of neoliberal policy. That's why last year in October, just to give us an example, people started organizing and took it to the street. They were even to the point, if that was going ahead, probably the government who has fall down. But unfortunately, the coronavirus came in, and the government have a chance to take a breath and trying to reorganize and take a little bit the offensive again. And I think we have to think in terms of international issues. I've been reading again and remembering the book of Naomi Klein, who talk about who write about the shock doctrine, the shock treatment that it took place. And Chile was actually the laboratory for that, one of the countries where it was implemented, the neoliberal policy to the extreme. Most of the country in Latin America and the Caribbean, everything is being privatized. The Medicares, the healthcare system, education, water, everything. The only thing that I guess it hasn't been privatized yet is air. But I always say, just wait, where the capitalist is gonna find a way how they can privatize also air. So in days like today, I think it's important that we look across the border, we reach across the border, and we express the solidarity to one another. As the wave of privatization has been established, I think we cannot fight alone. We need to reach out. As the old saying goes, when they lose, we lose, but when they win, we won in here too. It's not just a slogan. I think it's quite important. That's what I was saying, that in a day like today, let's reflect upon what's going on, but also let's put forward our ideas. How do we change this, this anachronic system that continue to exploit workers, continue to kill workers on the job? My homage, my message of solidarity to the frontline workers across the world, particularly in the healthcare system, because they are the ones that are putting their shoulder in terms of save lives, but also in terms of, save the economy per se and the services that people need to. But I think we need to think seriously in terms of expand our solidarity. Let's see what's going on in every country. Today, the imperialism, with Donald Trump at the head, is practically invading some countries again. Look at the economic sanctions that they are imposing in countries like Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, just to name three. Don't they understand that people are suffering? Of course, capitalism never care about it because they know that after this wave, they're going to have another wave of worker who's going to come, ready to work. But having said that, let's not accept that. Let's change. As somebody was saying, let's take it to the street again when this is all done and try to build a new. Because we need to build a new where workers are going to be able to control the economy, control the services, and build a new society for everybody where we won't be suffering under the system that we live today. So again, solidarity to everybody. Let's keep up the fight. Hopefully, as Daniel was saying, pretty soon we can join ourselves in the street to fight the system, to fight Kenny policies. How is it that quite easily $7.2 billion is given to the oil industry? What about education? He took the money from education to put to the oil industry. That's a crime, and it needs to be stopped. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramon. So I understand that we do have a representative now who can speak to the situation in the Cargill plant. If Joseph's on the call, we might hear from him. But right now I'm going to call on one of the union representatives in that plant. I just had it now. So John, I'm just looking for. Are you gone now? No. Try one more time. Oh, sorry, David. All right, David.
Yeah.
You are unmuted now. Yes, we can hear you.
So it was a bit of a surprise that I had to speak tonight, so forgive me. I'm not the representative for Cargill. I do know a lot about it, but I don't know all the intimate details like someone would if they were there. So we were watching the situation in across North America with meatpacking plants, particularly in the United States where coronavirus was hitting some of our sisters and brothers in meatpacking plants in the United States before it hit Canada. We were watching in horror as people were dying and there were large numbers of people infected with this insidious disease or virus before it had come here. So when leading up into the Easter weekend, we were pondering what to do, and it's not an easy decision for a union to it's at that point in time, I think out of 2,000 people, there might have been a few cases of corona, but it wasn't really prevalent in a workforce of 2,000. But knowing what we knew about how this virus spreads, we were pretty certain that it was going to be very bad after we had observed all the working conditions at Cargill, and there's another plant in Brooks, JBS plant, owned by a big Brazilian outfit. So it's a tough decision to tell your members that we want their employer to close down when out of 2,000 people, maybe a couple dozen had the virus by that point. But we made that decision on Easter Sunday to April 12th, the Easter Sunday, to ask Cargill to shut down in an abundance of caution, to deep clean the plant and put in some better safety precautions for the members there. It was pretty apparent to us that given just even the small amount of people who were infected at that point, that it would spread rapidly. There's just no opportunity with their current business model and production model for social distancing, and there's no room in the locker rooms, there's no room in the lunch rooms, there's just you just can't social distance in a massive beef processing plant with 1,000 people on shift at a time, all working shoulder to shoulder. And you know, it was really disappointing because in the weeks leading up to the massive outbreak, AHS and had done a sort of plant inspection, if you must. That's in quotations. I'm doing air quotations as I speak, because they had done it. Their plant inspection had been via cell phone, with a manager just walking around the plant with his cell phone on a Zoom meeting type thing, to show an AHS person who wasn't even on site that, you know, he was confident that things would be okay. And that was the government involvement at that time, and they just gave the company the thumbs up, and on they went on their happy way. So the AHS inspector wasn't even confident in attending the plant in person. So unfortunately, we were right. I mean, on the left, we're always right sometimes, right? We tell them what's going to happen before it happens, and unfortunately at Cargill, after April 12th, things just exploded when it came to positive tests for coronavirus, and we currently have over 900 positive tests or positive cases of coronavirus in the plant, which represents about half of their workforce, and they still plan to open this Monday, after closing down for a few days and deep cleaning. They've decided that with no involvement of the union, they didn't invite us to come in and observe the working conditions and how it would differ from when they shut down a few days ago. They had an inspection with AHS, and they say that they're prepared to open, and they've been given the blessing of some government officials who likely, just want the good graces of the industry rather than to try to protect 2,000 people's lives, and it's just terrible, I guess. We've today if you've been reading the news, we launched a lawsuit against the Occupational Health and Safety Department of Alberta, and we've also launched a lawsuit against Cargill for having the nerve to try to open so soon after having half their workforce infected with this virus and people dying. It's pretty terrible. Overall, it's in Calgary. I know most of you, I think, are in Edmonton, and I'm speaking from Calgary. The coronavirus is not subsiding in my experience in Calgary. In fact, there's more and more cases every single day in our plants, in our warehouses. Every single day, there's more and more cases and more
plants that are shut down for days or at a time, or sending people home because of this virus. It's just that it's not prevalent in the news because it's only something like Cargill that really flags for the public attention and gets media attention. But I will tell you that it's not over in Calgary. There's retail stores that have coronavirus cases in them, and some of our warehousing and trucking and food processing, and it's everywhere right now. And my fear is that people have become a little complacent. The weather's getting nice. You're seeing people want to get outdoors and resume normal life. And I will tell you right now that if we aren't really cautious in our approach, this will come back in full force, and we'll really regret having not having a more cautious approach to reopening businesses and the economy and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I have to say. Okay, I don't even know if they heard me. Is that
I'm sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Sorry about that. So yes, David, we heard you loud and clear. There's a lot of support here. Applause for the stand that the workers took. Shame for the company and the government for not ensuring the safety of the workers and to rushing back. Lots of calls for everyone here to support those Cargill workers, whatever their decision, whether they decide to go back or not, but to make sure that they're safe and know that we're all standing in solidarity with them. So I'm looking to see now if Joseph, who originally had planned to join us, is on the call. This is extremely challenging facilitating, but we are doing our best. I'm not seeing Joseph's number show up. So I'm going to return to our international solidarity, and in fact, our last speaker before we go to one more song. So Masood Shadnam is a member of the Edmonton Coalition Against War and Racism, and he's also active with other anti-war and solidarity groups internationally. So I will find Masood and okay, Masood, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Excellent. Well, greetings to all of you, my friends, comrades, fellow workers, and fellow human beings. It's great to be in your crowd, even virtually, to celebrate May Day during these troubled times. Well, we as people of the world stand together during these difficult times. We help one another to the best of our abilities, and we will get through this pandemic for sure. We will get through this. But how do we get through an imperial capitalist global system that does not recognize anything but self-interest? How do we get back to the so-called normal where nothing seems humanly normal? Several other speakers already talked about the system being in crisis And I want to highlight the global aspect of this crisis of the system. What I want to highlight in particular is the illegal, unethical sanctions of the United States against the people of Iran. I know it's not new. Many of you know that since 1979, when Iranian people toppled Shah, who everyone knows was a United States puppet, Iran has consistently been under US sanctions. Apparently, it's a bipartisan issue. It does not matter if Republicans are in power or Democrats. The US regime has zero tolerance for countries such as Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, you know, the countries that want to hold on to their independence and self-determination. So Iran sanctions are not new. They have been in place and steadily increasing for more than 40 years now. But there is more. You probably have heard in the news that following the outbreak of COVID-19 in China, Iran was one of the first countries that was hit by the virus. From day one of the outbreak, everyone rushed to contribute to controlling the disease and care for the patients, including not only the Iranian healthcare system workers, but also the government, all sections of the armed forces, as well as many grassroots NGOs and volunteer groups. But do you know what was the most significant obstacle on their way? Sanctions. It is very difficult to purchase medical equipment from other countries. It is very difficult to have any sort of financial transaction with other countries, all because of US imposed sanctions. Many around the world urged Donald Trump to ease sanctions on Iran, at least on medical and humanitarian items. The call had been backed by the former EU Foreign Affairs Chief Federica Mogherini, the former Director General of the World Health Organization, and several senior officials and diplomats who argued that easing sanctions could save quote unquote hundreds of thousands of lives. The response from Donald Trump was very predictable: to add more sanctions in the midst of a pandemic. So this is the true face of American imperialism, pure and naked. This is an act of medical terrorism, if you wish, that we must condemn. This is an example and a reminder for all of us to discard our illusions. We must keep up the fight, our fight for a just and humane world system. And I am, of course, honored to stand with you all in this fight. I'm also working with a group here in Alberta that is called Mobilization for Justice. And I just wanted to tell everyone that we do have another event coming up on May 16th, which is about Palestine. And I will put the link in the chat box here. Please feel free to join us there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Masood. And please, he shared the link to that event on chat, and I can share it also to the Facebook, the Mayday Facebook, so people are aware. So we've gone on a little longer than we had expected to have more time for discussion. But I think hopefully what's come through loud and clear in all of the comments is that it's the workers around the world who understand what's needed, how to meet people's needs, how to combat this pandemic. But what we're missing is the ability to decide, and that's what needs to change. We need to be the ones who are driving the decisions in all aspects of the economy and the society. So that's our goal in May Day and every day. So we're going to have another opportunity later on to have a discussion. We had hoped to discuss more with everybody here, but before we do that, we'll see if we have a bit of time at the end. But before we start to lose people, I did want to wrap up by inviting Maria Dunn, who's joining us, to lead us in singing Solidarity Forever. And then we'll come back and hopefully there'll be time for a few last words from other participants. So Maria, Maria, you're unmuted. Thank you so much for hanging in there. Can you hear us now?
Yes, yes. It's been, great to hear what everyone has said has been so meaningful and important. So thank you. And I hope you'll sing along. I'm sure you know it. When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. What force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn, but without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel would turn. We'll break their corporate power, earn our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They divide us by our color, they divide us by our tongue, they divide us by our gender, they divide us old and young. But they'll tremble at our voices when they hear these verses sung, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies magnified 1,000-fold. We'll bring to birth a new world from the ashes of the old, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. Yes, the union makes us strong. Thanks for singing along. I could see several of you singing along there. That was great.
Thanks so much, Maria. All right, so we will continue a little longer, although we've come to our scheduled time. Surprise, surprise, we've more to say than we have time to say it. But I'll invite Peggy who will help to kind of sum up and facilitate the last part of our discussion. Peggy, can you hear us?
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, happy May Day, everybody. Happy International Workers' Day. So this has been a great discussion. I just want to acknowledge that for some reason we can't manage to connect with Joseph, who's a shop steward at the Cargill plant, who's with us and can hear us, but we can't seem to connect with him. For some reason, we can't figure out this technology. So we really want to apologize, and I hope that we can find an opportunity soon to organize something where he and other Cargill workers can speak to us about the experience that they have had and the stand they've taken, because we know that they have really stood united with each other. They're determined to defend themselves, and we're all with them. And this is a time when the demand which workers are making, that they are the ones who have to have the final say on their wages and working conditions, has really come to the fore. And all of these problems which workers face on a daily basis, which have been exacerbated by the pandemic and which have been brought out, I think that that's really come out in the discussion and the contributions from everybody. And I think it's so valuable when we can get together like this and share experience, because it allows us to see what the bigger picture is, and then to think about that, because we've all, everyone who's spoken, I think in one way or another, has expressed the idea that we're not going back to the old normal. So we're not, that old normal, that old status quo is not acceptable, and we're not going there. So, you know, one of the features of that, which is really clear, is the right of workers to decide themselves what wages and working conditions are acceptable to them. And this is very, very important as the economy starts to open up again, that workers everywhere, we have to do our work to really develop that stand that the workers are taking, and popularize it and discuss it, that everywhere we have to support each other, that everyone should demand this, that we're not to, no more of this business that we ask and they refuse, and then what? So that's, I think, one of the conclusions. The other thing that I think people have brought out that's really important and significant is that all kinds of decisions are made, but they're not implemented. So we keep hearing from the politicians, you know, oh, we've got it. It's in the mail. We've done it. We've made this proclamation. We've said that this is the way it's going to be, or we've inspected this plant, which it turns out, of course, they haven't. We've decided that workers can only work at one site, and we've worked it all out. And in fact, it's not been implemented anywhere in Canada. And seniors are still dying in large numbers in long-term care, in a massacre for which these people who have carried out this antisocial offensive for so long are responsible. So what is that? That, I think, what people have brought out today is that the consequence of 30 years of neoliberal globalization is that we no longer have a public authority which defends the public good. It doesn't exist. It's been smashed. But what has been happening in this pandemic is that the workers themselves are coming forward to assume that role of the public authority, and to put forward what's needed, not only for themselves, but for, you know, in the situation of the care workers, for example, what their patients need, what society needs, and it's really being revealed that it's only the workers, it's only the working class which can provide that defense of what the society needs. And that's really what's coming out today. So it's both a question of defending our own rights as workers, but it's also showing that this moribund old capitalist class and the governments that serve it aren't capable and aren't interested, and have no even concern to serve the aims of the people. That's the consequence of the antisocial offensive. But we as the working class do, and we as the working class are the ones who are capable. So I think we've just scratched the surface of discussion today, and it seems to me we need a whole lot more, because the one thing that really strikes me in all of this is that when we say that it's not business as usual, then it means that we need to create something new, that the institutions that we have as workers aren't functioning to do what we want them to do, that the so-called representative democracy doesn't represent us, that we need our own thinking, our own independent working class politics, our own institutions, our own press, all of these things, our own party. We need all of these things. And so we need something new, and that is where the workers themselves set the agenda. They don't rely on anyone else. I think that's the lesson of the pandemic, that we can't rely on anyone else. We can't rely on someone else to solve this problem. It's we, the working class, who have to solve it. And so we're going to have to build whatever it is we need to do that. So yeah, we're going to be demonstrating at the legislature and all that, but not because we believe that they're going to change it. Because really what is going to be crucial is the ongoing discussion amongst ourselves, because there's no book we can open that's going to tell us how to go next. It's what we have to create ourselves. And so I think it was so valuable to hear from everyone today. I so much appreciate everyone's participation, and I wish everyone who's been with us the whole time, because we've hardly lost a single person, could speak. But I think probably
there are a few people.
They only do so much. So
there are a few folks that would like to speak.
Okay.
So I've started to take a speakers list, and Joseph is here, so I'm going to try and start with him. Then I've got Manny, Dessa, and Christina Gray. So starting with Joseph. Joseph, can you say a few words?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. You're just very quiet.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Oh, there, we can see you now as well.
Thank you. I have been there always, but no connection.
Okay.
So I will take from here. I heard David have said a lot of Calgary, but I'm going to take from this. Yesterday and today I was there to visit because they call the members to come and collect their things in lockers. So I was out there asking them, how do you feel? And everybody is afraid to come back to work. So there is a lot of fear among our members, the way they have been treated. And we are proud that the union have been there for them and is working hard 24 hours to make sure that they are safe. Today I went there and I found out that there is 700 members who didn't get paid. I feel really very sad that they went through stress, they went through pain, and today they are not paid. So what a heartless manager is there in Calgary. It hurt me a lot. And today I get a lot of calls from members. But I'm proud that the union is there for them and is working 24 hours to help them out. I'm proud that all our union brothers and sisters from different locals are there for us. And we are proud of that. So let us always unite. We will defeat this government of Jason Kennedy. It will go so far. We're going to fight and we'll always fight. We will not give up. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. And please keep us posted on the status of your struggle. We'll, if there's a petition or other actions that we can participate in, calling on Cargill to do the right thing, to pay the workers during the shutdown, to make sure things are safe, and to make sure that people have income in the meantime while they're making those changes. So we are definitely following and supporting you and your brothers and sisters there. All right, the next person on the speakers list is Manny. Go ahead.
Oh, hi everyone. Happy International Workers' Day. I have a proposal. I call it the May Labor Day Resolution 001, Alberta, Canada, to be passed today, May 1st, 2020. If employers not protecting the workers movement must comply a resolution for May Labor Day. Number 1, employers and government, a mandatory mask. No mask, no work. It should be part of union bargaining. Number 2, WCB and OHS must issue compliance order for employers. Violation of employers will be fined and the money goes to a pool of funds that will buy PPE. Number 3, all people working in the groceries and convenience store must wear masks and people buying are soon to be required masks. Number 4, a signature campaign for City Council, Provincial Parliament, and Federal to require employers to be criminally accountable or whatever legal accountability by virtue of legislation. If they don't issue masks to their employees, they are exposing them to the virus. Number 5, a class action suit and petition in the Federal Supreme Court requiring Parliament and provincial government to act for the workers and people to be protected. Number 6 and last, it is the class conscious and intellectuals like us that needs to lead for the struggle. We need to be the vanguard that should lead for the struggle, nobody one else. If not us, who do we expect? We should act faster before more deaths to come. What do we expect from them? Let's unite collectively, action together, less discussion, more action. Can the May Day participants agree on a proposed resolution and issued a unified statement? Workers of the world unite. Thank you for the time.
I'm wearing my PPE for all mask, and I think you're getting a lot of applause. And Manny has shared his proposal on the.
I have these.
Oh, nice. Okay, I think our next speaker is Dessa. Oops. I don't know. Okay, go ahead, Dessa.
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Dessa Mapa. I'm an international student, and it's my first time to join the International Workers' Day here in Canada. So I'll be presenting to you the position statement or letter on behalf of Professional Star. Professional Star is a nonprofit organization that's composed of professionals and students, and those we are all engaged in trades, arts, and in research, and some of us are in research institutes. So, greetings to the Canadian workforce. As we celebrate Labor Day today, may we all continue to assert the rights of the workers and recognize the role of the youth and the international community as your allies. We are one with you in your struggles for equality and inclusivity. As members of the youth, we will soon become part of the Canadian workforce. We are currently being educated today in our universities, colleges, and institutes to have the necessary knowledge and skills so that soon we can be competitive enough to contribute to the society and the Canadian economy. These schools continue to teach us the values and roles of leadership, empathy, relationship building, equality, inclusivity, innovation, globalization, and sustainability in various organizations. Soon we will experience how these ideas come into play in dealing with the challenges that you now face. Moreover, as part of the international community, we are here to help you and your country to prosper. We are not taking your jobs away from you, as some of you may think. As we work with you in different organizations, we hope that we can supplement the manpower that organizations need for growth. As members of the workforce, your hopes are our hopes too, and your challenges are ours also. This Labor Day, the international community is one with you in the hopes that as the companies and organizations we are working for continue to flourish, their employees will equally benefit. We are also hoping that this growth will bring more jobs for the unemployed, not only here in Canada, but also in other parts of the world. So signed, Dessa Mapa, international student at NATE, also the Vice President of Operations and Finance for the Philippine Students Association of NATE, and the International Director for Corporate Communications and the Director for Youth Empowerment for Professional Star. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dessa. Christina, I will unmute you shortly. Okay, go ahead, Christina. Christina?
Yes, hi.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I just, oh, wait, there we go. Hi. I just really wanted to say happy International Workers' Day. Happy May Day to everyone. Big thank you to everybody who helped to host and to all the speakers, because I think everyone was telling parts of the same incredibly important story. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciated listening to everyone and their expertise and to hear the voices of the workers directly. My caucus and I are continuing to fight back against this government's horrible decisions, the situations that are developing. We're going to keep doing that. Please reach out to us if we can help in the fight with you. And it always helps us to know what's going on the shop floors. And that's why the voices of workers are so important. So the caucus and I will continue to fight. I saw some of my colleagues on the Zoom. Such a great way to see everybody. Can I just say it was really nice to see you, friends, because it's been a little while. But Janice and Shannon Phillips and David Shepard were all able to join in and listen and be here in solidarity with you. So thank you so much from the NDP caucus and on behalf of Leader Rachel Notley.
Thank you, Christina. Sergio, okay, oops.
Hi.
Sergio, we can hear you.
Hi. Yeah, first of all, happy International Workers' Day. But the biggest thing I wanted to say is the idea of the collective health. This concept that we're in the renaissance of collective health globally. And where does that go from here? And how do we embrace not just the front lines of healthcare, but we move on to our resources, to how do we protect our water? How do we protect the next levels that are being attacked? So we need to start thinking about expanding these ideas that we have today as to how we're collectively coming together to suppress the virus, but at the same time, we're learning how to work with each other in a different way. And that's extremely important because moving forward, we saw what compañero Ramona Japan was saying before in Chile, the test tube for Milton Friedman's ideas of what capitalism does in Chile is that when you start privatizing little things here and there, all these things have roots, deep roots, and they're slowly connected with each other. And we need to understand that all this little bit of privatization, they are interwoven together and they will affect us all in different ways. Like Sandra was saying about the labs that's coming next, and this seniors care is, all these things are interconnected. And we need to understand the whole concept as to how to protect this as workers, to say, no, this is not okay. And as our collective health, to say, how do we move forward? How do we protect our resources? How do we protect our water? And that is the point of view, is that we can look towards Chile as the example and then come back towards to say, okay, in Canada, we're seeing the same things. We're seeing it the tide is rising slowly, but at least in the virus, what we see that it is here already. We see it, the water's coming up and we see it. So I'm part of that, but the other way, solidarity to all my brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. All right, Peggy, you're still unmuted, but I haven't got anybody else on the speakers list. Are there any last words that people wanted to? Oh, Sandra's got her hand out. We'll unmute. Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you. I just actually wanted to invite all of you, and again, thank you for inviting us to a town hall meeting, a virtual town hall meeting that we'll be hosting on May the 7th, that will focus solely on seniors care and how we can move from here. We'll have awesome speakers like Carol Wodak, along with Andrew Longhurst and Pat Armstrong, two researchers that have done an incredible amount of work around private ownership versus public ownership of seniors care, and Carol, who's going to give us a historical breakdown of how we got here. So go on to our website, www.Friends of Medicare, to sign on, and we hope to see you all there.
Thank you, Sandra. Go ahead, Peggy.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more invitation. And that is that on Sunday from 12 to 2, this coming Sunday, May the 3rd, the Workers Center of CPCML, which publishes Workers Forum, is holding a video discussion, a Workers Forum. So it'll be workers from across the country discussing their experience and having an exchange of opinions. So everyone is welcome and invited to join in as well. It'll be, you know, a different experience to hear people and participate with workers from all across the country. So if you would like to join, just send an email to Workers Center, all one word, at cpcml.ca. And I put it in the chat. It's somewhere.
I beat you to it.
In the chat.
All right.
It was just great to see you all. Happy May Day.
Happy May Day to everyone. I think the lesson that we take from this event on May Day and in every day really is that workers have to take the lead by exercising more control over the decisions which affect our lives. So we take up this challenge on May Day by discussing our concerns together and trying to move forward in this fight. At the end of the day, it's the working people who are fighting for a society that provides for all of us and in which our rights are all upheld. So who decides? We decide. No one should be left behind. End the privatization of seniors care, quality public seniors care now, staffing ratios now, personal protective equipment for all. Lip service is not enough. Power to the frontline workers. Healthcare for all, regardless of immigration status. Workers' rights under attack. What do? Stand up, fight back. The workers united will never be defeated. Thank you very much. The last thing I'll let you know is that on 3:30 on Sunday, we will have a chance to assess this event. Our committee is going to keep meeting regularly. So if you're interested to do that, keep tuned to the Facebook event. This Facebook event, we'll put more information there about how you can join us 3:30 on Sunday. To talk about how we did this time to improve it and to also keep moving our work together forward. So we know that all the people here are also busy in organizing and mobilizing for workers' rights. So keep in touch with each other, and long live international solidarity and long live International Workers' Day. Thank you all. Bye-bye.